All right, so as everyone knows, this is the best month of the year. And now you might be thinking to yourself, what is this guy talking about? This is usually this same guy who's always complaining about how miserable his life is and how hard college is. And yeah, that's right, that's me. But it's also the best month of the year because this is where all things lovely and beautiful combine. The leaves are changing, the weather's cool, it's almost flannel season, and maybe because it's the MLB playoffs, there's NFL, college football, hockey, everything. Sports paradise, as one might say. And at me being a podcaster, I like to listen to some sports podcasts. And there's this one podcast in particular, it's a college football podcast, called The Hard Count with J.D. Pickell that I like to listen to. And in the intro to every episode, he starts by saying, it's such and such day, whatever year, last one on the face of the earth. And that little phrase at the end, last one on the face of the earth, kind of got me thinking. And first of all, it got me thinking about what dates kind of stick in my head from the past. And then eventually, I got to the point where I was thinking about, if there's a diary written about my life, what would every day have written in it? And then I started thinking about, if this said diary were given to hopefully someday I'll have them kids and grandkids, what would they think about my life? And then finally, I thought to myself, how many of those days would I actually want them to read? How many of those days would I be proud to show them? Or rather, how many of those would I be embarrassed for them to read? How many of those would I rather just Sharpie out and forget ever happened? And it got me thinking about how I approach each day. It made me realize how I lived a lot of days without a purpose, without a goal, without something I wanted to accomplish that day. A lot of wasted days. And so tonight, I want to briefly talk about why we need to live each day with a purpose. The problem is that life's pretty short. Everyone always says it goes faster the older you get, and I'm only 20, it seems to be flying by already. And we see this talked about a lot in the Bible. I'll just hit on a few verses here. First of all, in Psalm 144:4, man is like a mere breath. His days are like a passing shadow. Psalm 39:5, behold, you have made my days like handwidths, and my lifetime is nothing in your sight. Surely every man at his best is a mere breath. And also James 4:14, yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow, for you're just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. These passages all show how fleeting life is. And now, with that in mind, shouldn't that make us want to use these few days that we do have and put them to good use? Well, how are we going to do that? Well, I'm going to suggest 3 ideas tonight. First of all, we need to live with intent. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 and 16. So then, be careful how you walk, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of your time, because the days are evil. We need to make the most of our time. We need to maximize what we can get out of our daily lives. And what's the best possible way we can do that? Proverbs 16:3. Commit your works to the Lord, and your plans will be established. And also Colossians 3, verse 23. Whatever you do your work heartily as for the Lord and not for people. Being intentional with our time and using that time to serve and honor the Lord is the best possible purpose that we can have. Secondly, we don't need to overlook now, and we don't need to get carried away looking ahead. Matthew 6:34. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Now, this obviously is not saying that we need to forget about everything except the moment that we're living in, because that's one, unpractical, and bless, some of us don't need any more help procrastinating things. But what I think we can apply from this passage is that if we're so focused and too focused on the future and on things to come, we're going to lose sight of what is right in front of us, and we can lose the purpose that we're looking for. Serving the Lord requires being present in that service and being intentional about our service today, while also preparing for what may be coming tomorrow and after. Thirdly, we need to do the will of the Lord, and this is probably the most important one. Going back to 2 of the passages that we read, the verses right after them point to this. Back in Ephesians 5, where we read verses 15 and 16, Verse 17 says, "Therefore do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is." And also back in James 4, we read verse 14. Verse 15 says, "Instead you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that." The best way to know for sure that we are being intentional in our lives is by actively seeking to do His will and making sure everything we do aligns with it. That has to be our primary focus, has to be our primary mission, and the trump card in our day-to-day lives. I want to close with a little visual here. So this is a picture with 4,200 squares on it. And I don't know if that's exact or not. I asked AI to make it, so who knows. I sure didn't go through and try to count all those. But each square represents a week in an 80-year life, give or take a few. It may seem like a lot, but once you kind of start to look at it, it doesn't seem like it's all that many. And some of you may have even lived out all these dots lived out all these squares and are adding more squares to it, which is pretty great. But me being only 20, that's what mine looks like right now. It's quite a few that's already gone. And my point is, when each square disappears, is that a square that we're proud of? Is that a week that we're proud of? Or is that one that we wish we may have had back and wish we could do over again? So I hope this has been helpful tonight. I hope this is something that you can think about this week. If you're not a Christian, there's no better time than now to maximize the time to give your life to Christ tonight and find purpose in Him. If you are a Christian and you need prayers or anything, we can help you with that as well. Whatever you need, we ask you to come forward while we stand and while we sing.